Duke didn't bark at the men in the mansion. He ran into the storm with something tied to his collar that could ruin them. Rain hammered the broken glasshouse as Cole Bennett hit the stone floor, blood warm on his lip. Above him, boots scraped across wet tile. Duke squeezed into the black vent, a red trail following his injured paw. Behind Cole, a man struck a match near the old records and smiled. What do you think Duke was carrying? The first sound Cole Bennett heard was thunder under the bridge. Not real thunder. Tires. An 18-wheeler rolled across the concrete above him, its trailer slamming over a joint in the road with a sharp metal crack that split the dark open. Cole came up fast. His right hand shot beneath the driver's seat before his eyes were fully open. His fingers closed around the worn handle of a folding knife. His left shoulder hit the cracked window of the pickup. For half a second, the cab was not a truck parked under a Kentucky bridge. It was a Humvee with dust boiling through the doors, somebody shouting contact, somebody else screaming for a medic, white light flashing over the windshield. Then a cold nose pressed against his wrist. Duke. The German shepherd had wedged himself between the seats, one paw on Cole's thigh, his muzzle heavy over the hand holding the knife. He did not bark. Duke almost never wasted sound. He just stared at Cole with those steady brown eyes until the old soldier loosened his grip. Cole blinked once, then again. Rain ticked on the hood. Wind moved through the weeds outside. Somewhere above, the truck that had woken him rolled on toward the next town, carrying normal people to normal places. Cole let the knife fold shut. Clear, he whispered, though there was no one to report to. Duke kept his nose on Cole's wrist until Cole's breathing stopped catching in his throat. Only then did the dog lower himself back onto the blanket spread across the passenger side floorboard. It was not much of a blanket. Army green once, thin now, with a burn mark near one corner and a tear Duke had made during a nightmare of his own. Cole had tried giving the whole thing to the dog the night before, but Duke had pushed half of it back across the seat with his paws, as if fairness still mattered under a bridge. The cab smelled of wet wool, old coffee, dog fur, and rust. Cole rubbed the frost from the inside of the windshield with the heel of his hand. Gray morning waited beyond the glass. The bridge columns rose like dead trees in the mist, and the creek below ran high from 2 days of rain. His pickup sat half hidden in gravel and weeds, angled so the rear bumper faced the road. Habit. Never nose in. Never park without a way out. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out what remained of breakfast, half a biscuit wrapped in a napkin from Reed's Gas and Grocery. It had gone hard overnight. He broke it in two and gave the larger piece to Duke. Duke sniffed it, then looked at him. "Don't start," Cole said. His voice scraped low, unused. "You eat." The dog obeyed, but slowly, watching Cole chew his smaller piece like it was part of the job. Cole had been a lot of things before he became a man sleeping under bridges. Sergeant, engineer, husband, father, the guy people called when a porch sagged, a barn door stuck, a culvert washed out, or a church roof needed patching before Sunday. His hands had built things in places where nothing stayed standing for long. Iraq, Afghanistan. Flooded hollers, back roads, county farms. Now those hands shook when thunder came too close. He flexed his fingers and looked at the faded photograph clipped to the visor. A woman with wind-blown hair smiled beside a little girl holding a paper crown. His wife, Rachel. His daughter, Emily. Years ago. Before hospital bills. Before silence. Before Emily stopped answering calls that came from numbers she did not recognize. A knock hit the window. Cole's body moved before thought. He turned sideways, one shoulder low, knife hand ready but hidden. Duke rose beside him, silent, ears forward. A young county deputy stood outside in a rain jacket, one hand lifted where Cole could see it. He looked too young to have lines around his eyes, but he had them anyway. "Morning," the deputy said through the glass. "You Cole Bennett?" Cole lowered the window 2 inches. Cold air slipped in. "Depends who's asking." The deputy glanced at Duke, then back to Cole. "I'm not here to run you off. Mr. Lawson at the county office asked me to find you. Said you don't have a mailing address that works." Cole said nothing. The deputy pulled a thick envelope from inside his jacket and passed it through the gap. Cream-colored paper. Official seal. Too clean for a place like this. "What is it?" "Property notice," the deputy said. "Or maybe an offer. He said you should read it today." Cole looked at the envelope but did not open it. The deputy shifted in the mud. "You got somewhere warm to go?" Cole almost laughed. It came out as air. Duke's breath fogged the glass. The deputy saw that and looked away first. "Road crews will be checking under here later. Best not be parked when they come." He tapped the roof once, not unkindly, then walked back to his cruiser. Cole waited until the taillights disappeared before he opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages long. He read the first one twice because the words did not line up with the world he knew. Blackwood Ridge House, Cedar Hollow County. Abandoned residential estate. Emergency stewardship transfer. 90-day restoration review. Temporary occupancy granted upon signature. No purchase price required. Cole stopped there. No purchase price. He read it again, slower this time. The county had taken control of an old mountain property after decades of unpaid maintenance disputes, failed claims, and structural complaints. 3 prior applicants had withdrawn after inspection. The house was considered too damaged to sell easily and too expensive to demolish before winter. If a qualified repairman agreed to stabilize the place, document progress, and remain on site, the county would allow him to live there for 90 days. If he proved it could be saved, he could petition for permanent transfer. A ruined mansion on a ridge. Free. Cole stared through the windshield at the bridge supports, at the creek, at the wet gravel, at the trash caught in the weeds. Free things always had teeth. He had learned that long before the army, learned it again after. Duke shifted and gave a small shiver. Not dramatic, just a tremor under the fur, quick and gone, the kind of thing a proud animal tried to hide. Cole looked at him. The dog had slept beside him in parking lots, behind closed churches, near loading docks, under pine trees, and once in the shell of a burned-out hunting cabin. Duke had stood between him and men who laughed too loudly, had woken him before panic swallowed him whole, had eaten last without complaint, and walked on cracked paths over frozen ground, because Cole had nowhere better to take him. A house nobody wanted. A roof, maybe. Walls, maybe. A last warm place, if he could make one. Cole folded the letter along its creases and put it inside his coat. Above him, another truck crossed the bridge. The sound rolled through the concrete like distant artillery. Cole's jaw tightened, but this time he did not reach for the knife. Duke placed one paw on his boot. Cole started the pickup. The engine coughed, caught, and filled the cab with a rough old vibration. "All right," he said, turning toward the road that led into the mountains. "Let's go see what kind of trouble they're giving away." The road to Cedar Hollow climbed through wet timber and broken fog. Cole kept both hands on the wheel, loose but ready, the way he had learned to hold a rifle on long patrols when being tense only wore a man down. The pickup's heater pushed out more noise than warmth. Duke sat upright in the passenger seat, his head turned toward the cracked window, nose working at every change in the air. Coal country opened around them in pieces. A rusted tipple stood above the trees, like the bones of an old animal. Sagging trailers leaned along the roadside. their yards filled with tires, firewood, and children's bicycles left out in the rain. A church sign promised Sunday service and free supper on Wednesdays. The mountains rose behind everything, dark and patient, as if they had watched men dig, fight, leave, and come back with nothing. Cole passed a faded welcome sign. Cedar Hollow home of Blackwood Ridge. Someone had shot 2 holes through the word home. The county office sat beside the courthouse, a square brick building with water stains under the gutters. Cole parked where he could see the street, the front doors, and the alley to the right. Duke waited until Cole gave a low click of his tongue, then hopped down beside him. Inside, the air smelled of old paper, floor wax, and burnt coffee. A woman behind the counter looked at Duke first, then at Cole's coat, boots, beard, and the envelope in his hand. Her face did not change, but her fingers moved toward the phone until a man stepped out from the back office. "Mr. Bennett?" Cole turned. The man was thin, early 40s, with tired eyes and a tie that had been loosened before noon. He carried a folder tucked under one arm. "Peter Lawson," he said. "County attorney. I'm the one who sent the letter." Cole did not take the offered handshake right away. He looked at Lawson's shoes, his cuffs, the folder, the exit behind him. Not threat. Office man. Nervous, but not hunting. Then Cole shook his hand. Lawson glanced down at Duke. "He come with you?" "He goes where I go." "That may be the smartest policy either of you has." Lawson led them into a small conference room where a space heater clicked in the corner. He laid out photographs across the table. Cole had seen ruined things before. Houses after floods, schools after shelling, farm buildings flattened by wind. But Blackwood Ridge House had a different kind of damage. It looked less destroyed than abandoned in the middle of a sentence. The mansion was built of dark mountain stone, 3 stories high, with a wide front porch half collapsed under its own weight. Ivy and wild grapevine climbed the walls. Windows gaped black where glass had fallen out. A turret on the east corner leaned slightly, not enough to fall, just enough to make a man notice. Behind it, pine forest pressed close from every side. Lawson tapped the first document. Blackwood Ridge House has been vacant for over 30 years. The county assumed control after a long chain of unpaid liens, failed inheritance claims, and safety complaints. 3 applicants have tried to take stewardship in the last 11 years. All 3 withdrew. Why? Officially? Lawson adjusted his glasses. Structural burden. Weather exposure. Unclear land attachments. No reliable utilities. Cost. Cole studied him. Unofficially? Lawson looked at the closed door before answering. People say the house doesn't let men stay. Duke's ears shifted. Cole leaned back in the chair. Houses don't do much but stand there. Usually. The word hung in the room. Lawson slid another page forward. This is the agreement. You would be allowed to occupy the property immediately. You'd have 90 days to show basic stabilization, roof coverage, safe room for sleeping, limited water access, no exposed electrical hazards in occupied areas. And if I don't? The county can revoke stewardship and sell the land package. To who? Lawson's jaw tightened just enough for Cole to see it. There are interested development parties. Names? For now, not on this paper. Cole almost smiled. That means yes. Lawson did not smile back. It means you should read before you sign. Cole read every line, slowly. He had learned the hard way that danger did not always come with muzzle flashes. Sometimes it came in fine print, stamped and notarized. Duke sat beside his chair, silent, but his body never fully relaxed. Twice people passed outside the room. Twice Duke looked at the door before Cole heard the footsteps. The papers gave him nothing easy. No money, no repair fund, no promise the house would ever be his. Only the right to sleep under a roof no one else wanted, if he could keep that roof from falling. Cole signed. Peter Lawson watched the pen move across the page and let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. "You have keys?" Cole asked. Lawson opened a drawer and removed a ring with 2 modern keys and 1 old iron one blackened with age. "The front door may not take the old key anymore," he said. "Locks have been changed over the decades, but the iron key was found in the courthouse records box. It belonged to the original estate." Cole closed his fingers around the keys. The iron one felt cold through his skin. Lawson lowered his voice. "Mr. Bennett, one more thing. Don't let anyone rush you into signing anything else, especially not in the first few days." Cole looked up. "Someone going to try?" Lawson's eyes moved toward the window, where the mountains were half hidden by fog. In Cedar Hollow, the past doesn't stay buried because people respect it. It stays buried because someone keeps shoveling dirt on top. The drive to Blackwood Ridge took 20 minutes from town, then so another 10 on a gravel road that had not been graded in years. Branches scraped both sides of the truck. Mud sucked at the tires. Cole drove slow, watching the edges, noting fresh cuts on low limbs where another vehicle had passed recently. Not county. Too wide. Heavy SUV, maybe. Duke stood with his front paws on the dashboard now, staring ahead. The trees broke open at the top of the ridge. Blackwood Ridge House waited in a clearing of dead grass and black pines. Cole stopped the truck. The photographs had not shown the size of it. The mansion rose from the mountain, like it had been quarried out of the ridge itself. Dark stone walls, tall windows, a porch sagging under rot. Chimneys cracked, but still standing. The whole place leaned into the gray afternoon, wounded and stubborn. Wind moved through broken glass somewhere inside, making a thin whistling sound. Cole did not get out right away. His eyes mapped the place automatically. Front approach exposed. Tree cover to the west. Collapsed porch, unsafe. Possible cellar access around back. Upper windows empty. No movement. "Big A.O.," he muttered. Duke gave a low sound in his chest. Cole opened the door. Easy. But Duke did not wait for the front steps. The German shepherd jumped down, sniffed the wet grass once, then moved along the side of the house with purpose. Not wandering. Tracking. Cole followed, one hand near the tool belt he still wore out of habit. They passed a stone well choked with leaves, a rusted pump, and a stack of old firewood gone soft with moss. Around the back, half hidden by weeds, stood a cellar door made of iron straps and gray wood. Duke stopped there. His nose lowered to the seam. Then his ears went forward, his tail went still, and a quiet growl rolled out of him. Cole looked at the cellar door, then at the mansion looming above them. The wind pushed through the pines. Somewhere beneath the house, deep under stone and earth, something gave a faint metallic tick. Duke did not move. Cole tightened his grip on the keys. "Well," he said softly, "I guess we found the first thing nobody put in the brochure." Duke stayed fixed on the cellar door. Cole crouched beside him and ran his fingers along the seam where swollen wood met stone. Rust had eaten through both hinges. The padlock was new compared to the rest of the house, maybe 10 years old, maybe less. That bothered him more than if it had been ancient. Old locks told old stories. New locks on abandoned places meant somebody had been back. He stood, looked over both shoulders, then scanned the tree line. Pine branches moved in the wind. Dead leaves skittered across the yard. No engine sounds, no voices. Still, Cole counted the exits the way he always did. Truck behind him. Open slope to the west. tree cover north, bad footing near the well. No clean LZ if things went wrong. Not that anybody was coming for him by air anymore. Not tonight, he told Duke. The dog did not like the answer. His ears stayed forward, his body angled at the cellar door as if the thing behind it had a scent worth remembering. Cole touched 2 fingers to Duke's neck. House first, basement after. They went around to the front. The porch complained under Cole's weight before he made the second step. He stopped, tested the board with one boot, then shifted right where the joists looked less rotten. Duke waited until Cole crossed, then followed exactly in his footprints. That was not training from any manual. That was years of watching each other survive bad ground. The front door took the modern key. Barely. When Cole pushed it open, the house breathed out. Cold air rolled over him, carrying the smell of wet plaster, old ash, mouse droppings, and wood that had held too much rain for too many seasons. The foyer opened wide beneath a cracked ceiling. A staircase rose ahead, its banister carved from dark walnut, beautiful even under dust. To the left, a parlor sagged in shadow. To the right, a dining room waited with a long table still standing beneath a sheet gray with age. Cole did not step in deep at first. He stood inside the threshold and listened. Water somewhere. Wind through broken glass upstairs. A slow tap from the far wall. Nothing moving that breathed. Clear enough, he murmured. Duke entered low and quiet, nose working. He moved to the base of the stairs, sniffed, then circled back to Cole. No warning. Not here. They picked the parlor for the night because it had a fireplace, 2 intact walls, and only one window broken enough to matter. Cole brought in what he owned from the truck. 1 duffel, a bedroll, 2 cans of beans, a dented coffee pot, a roll of duct tape, a tarp, a hammer, a pry bar, and the toolbox he had refused to sell even when hunger made the pawn shop look friendly. By sunset, he had plastic taped over the broken window and a small fire going in the hearth. The chimney drew poorly at first, pushing smoke into the room in bitter gray ropes. Cole opened the front door 6 inches, adjusted the damper with a piece of bent metal, and waited until the smoke climbed the way it was supposed to. Duke watched from near the fire, his front paws stretched out, his old bones taking in the heat. For the first time in weeks, the dog stopped shivering. Cole saw it and looked away. The room darkened around them. Firelight moved across cracked plaster and old portraits too stained to recognize. Rain began after 8, soft at first, then steady, then hard enough to drum on the roof like fingers on a coffin lid. The first leak showed itself above the dining room. The second came through the foyer ceiling. The third hit the parlor floor 3 feet from Cole's bedroll with a sharp, steady sound. Tap, tap, tap. Cole placed a pot beneath it, then another under the foyer leak, then a cracked mixing bowl beneath the one in the dining room. Soon the house had its own rhythm. Rain on roof, water in pots, wind in glass, fire in the grate. Duke lifted his head every time the old walls shifted. Cole sat with his back against the corner where he could see the front door, the hall, and the window. He ate beans cold from the can, then fed Duke the last spoonful even after the dog tried to refuse it. "Don't argue with rank," Cole said. Duke licked the spoon clean. Later, when the fire burned low, Cole unrolled his blanket but did not lie down. He took the iron key from his pocket and turned it over in his palm. It was heavier than it looked, black and worn smooth where fingers had held it long ago. No number, no tag, no label. From outside came the low moan of wind moving up the ridge. Then lightning flashed. White filled the room. For an instant, the cracked ceiling became desert sky. The broken window became a windshield punched through with dust. Rain became gravel against armor. A chair falling somewhere in the house became metal tearing open. Cole hit the floor before the thunder arrived. His shoulder slammed into the boards. One hand covered the back of his head. The other reached for a weapon that was not there. His mouth moved without permission. Contact left. Down. Down. Clear the door. Clear the... Duke was on him. Not attacking. Anchoring. The dog pressed his full weight across Cole's chest and shoulder, pinning him to the floor with warm muscle and a heartbeat Cole could feel through his coat. Duke's muzzle pushed under Cole's chin, forcing his face away from the dark corner, away from whatever his mind had dragged into the room. Cole's fingers dug into the floorboards. The thunder rolled over the mansion and down the mountain. He counted because counting was better than drowning. 1, 2, 3. Duke breathed hot against his neck. 4, 5. Rain. Kentucky. Fire. Dog. Not Iraq. Not the road outside Bakuba. Not the boy by the culvert. Cole shut his eyes until the white spots faded. When he opened them, Duke was still there, holding him to the present, without a sound. "Okay," Cole whispered. His voice was gone thin. "Okay, buddy. I'm back." Duke did not move for another full minute. When Cole finally sat up, he found his hands shaking. He tucked them under his arms so no one could see, though there was no one there but the dog and the old house. He added wood to the fire, checked the front door, checked the window, checked the hall, then checked them all again. Near midnight, the rain worsened. Water began running down the inside of the far wall in thin silver lines. Cole moved the bedroll closer to the fireplace and made Duke lie on the coat he spread beside it. The dog obeyed, but his eyes stayed open. Sometime in the deep hours before dawn, Cole drifted into the kind of sleep that was never really sleep. A sound pulled him out. Not thunder, not water. A metallic tick rose from below the house, then another. Duke was already standing. His body faced the hall. His head pointed toward the rear of the mansion, toward the locked cellar door outside. His ears were up, tail stiff, a ridge of fur lifted along his spine. Cole held still. The house seemed to hold still with him. Rain ticked in the pots. The fire popped once. From beneath the floor there came a faint dragging sound, metal against stone, too deliberate to be settling wood. Duke gave one low growl. Cole reached for the flashlight beside his boot and let his thumb rest on the switch. "Yeah," he whispered, eyes on the dark hallway. "I heard it too." By morning, the sound under the floor was gone. The house looked almost innocent in daylight. Rainwater dripped from the porch roof in slow beads. Mist clung to the ridge and moved between the black pines like smoke. Cole stood in the parlor with his coat zipped to his throat, looking at the dark hallway that led toward the back of the house. Duke sat beside him, eyes fixed in the same direction. Neither of them had slept much. Cole had checked the cellar door from outside at first light. The new padlock was still in place. No fresh boot prints near it, only deer tracks and the deep pads Duke had left the day before. That should have made him feel better. It did not. A house could make noises. Pipes shifted, stone cooled, old metal contracted in the cold. Cole knew all that. He had rebuilt enough ruined buildings to understand the language of decay. But last night had not sounded like decay. It had sounded like movement. He spent the morning doing what he could with what little he had. He dragged a tarp over the worst part of the roof from an upstairs window, tied it off to a chimney with rope, and weighted the lower edge with broken bricks. He pulled wet carpet from the foyer and threw it onto the porch. He marked weak floorboards with strips of duct tape so he would not step wrong in the dark. Duke followed every move, limping slightly from stiffness, never letting Cole out of sight. By noon, Cole's stomach had folded in on itself. He counted his cash on the dining room table. $23 and some change. Enough for nails, maybe a loaf of bread, canned beans, and dog food, if Reed's store was cheaper than the gas station down the road. Supply run, he told Duke. The dog stood before Cole finished the sentence. They drove down the ridge slow, the truck slipping twice in the mud before the gravel road found firmer ground. Cole watched the mirrors more than the road ahead. Last night's sound stayed under his skin. So did Peter Lawson's warning. Don't let anyone rush you into signing anything else. Cedar Hollow looked smaller in daylight. A few men stood outside the old feed store, their hands wrapped around coffee cups, conversation stopping when Cole's pickup rolled by. A woman pulled her child closer on the sidewalk, then looked embarrassed for doing it. Cole kept his eyes forward. He had worn uniforms in places where people watched him with fear. He had never gotten used to seeing it at home. Reed's store sat near the end of Main Street, half grocery, half diner, with a bell over the door and a hand-painted sign in the window that said, "Hot coffee, biscuits, local honey." Cole left the window cracked for Duke. Duke refused to stay. He stepped down from the truck and moved beside Cole's left leg, close enough that his shoulder brushed Cole's knee. "All right," Cole muttered. "But don't judge me if I can't afford the good stuff." Inside, the store smelled like coffee, bacon grease, sawdust, and old wood. Shelves held canned goods, work gloves, flashlight batteries, bootlaces, fishing line, and jars of preserves with handwritten labels. Two older men at the counter looked at Duke, then Cole, then went quiet. Behind the register stood a woman in her late 60s with gray hair tied back and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She was small, but there was nothing fragile about her. She wiped her hands on a towel and looked at Duke first. "That dog hungry?" Cole paused. "He's eaten. That wasn't what I asked." Duke looked up at Cole as if interested in the answer. Cole took a slow breath. He could eat. The woman reached under the counter, broke a biscuit in half, and set it on a napkin near the door. Duke looked at Cole, waited for the nod, then took it gently. "Good manners," she said. "Better than most men in this town." Cole placed nails, a small bag of dog food, 2 cans of beans, and a roll of plastic sheeting on the counter. "How much?" She rang it up, then quietly removed 1 can of beans from the total, along with the biscuit she had not charged for. Cole noticed. "I pay what I owe," he said. "Then fix the Ridge house and we'll call it even." The store went quieter. Cole looked at her. "You know who I am. Everybody knows by now." She folded the receipt and slid it across. "Cole Bennett, Army, no permanent address. Took the Blackwood place when 3 other men had the sense to walk away." Cole's jaw set. "You always read county paperwork with breakfast?" "No, I listen. People talk when they think an old woman is busy counting change." She looked toward the window, where the ridge was hidden by fog. "Name's Martha Reed." Cole picked up the bag. "You got something to say about the house, Mrs. Reed?" "Martha." "All right." "Martha." She leaned both hands on the counter. "People will tell you Blackwood Ridge is cursed. They'll say men go up there and come back different. They'll say the place eats money, sleep, and good sense. What do you say?" "I say land doesn't curse people. People curse land." One of the men at the counter cleared his throat and left $1 under his cup before walking out. Martha watched him go, then lowered her voice. "The Blackwoods owned half that mountain once. Water rights, timber, old stone quarry, some coal access before the seams played out. Then records burned at the county office in '79, and suddenly nobody could prove what belonged to who." Cole felt the room narrow. Peter Lawson mentioned unclear land attachments. "That's a clean way to say dirty work." Duke shifted beside Cole, nose lifting toward the back room of the store. Martha saw it and softened for the first time. "You ever hear the name Frank Bennett?" she asked. Cole did not move. The fluorescent light above the counter buzzed. "My father's name was Frank." Martha's eyes changed. Not surprise. Something closer to sorrow. "He worked up at Blackwood Ridge in 1978. Engineer, survey hand, repairman, whatever needed doing. Quiet man. Kept a little notebook in his shirt pocket and measured everything twice." Cole stared at the counter. He saw, not the store, but a man's back disappearing down a gravel drive. A lunch pail, work boots, the smell of motor oil. His mother crying in the kitchen after the funeral, saying only that Frank had been drunk, that Frank had made bad choices, that Frank had left them with nothing. "He died in a car wreck," Cole said. Martha did not answer quickly. "That's what the paper printed." Cole looked up. Duke stopped chewing the last crumb of biscuit. Martha reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old matchbook, yellowed with age. Blackwood Ridge Estate was printed across the front in faded black letters. On the inside, someone had written a name and a date in pencil. Frank Bennett, October 1978. "I kept that because your father gave it to my husband the week before he died," Martha said. "Told him if anything happened, somebody should remember he was working up there for a reason." Cole's fingers closed around the matchbook. Outside, a truck rolled slowly past the store window. Black SUV, tinted glass, too clean for the wet street. Duke turned his head and gave one low growl. Martha saw the vehicle too. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "Looks like somebody else remembers too." Cole did not turn his head right away. He watched the reflection in the store window instead. Old habit. Glass told the truth without announcing that a man was looking. The black SUV rolled past Reed's store slowly, too slowly for a wet mountain street with no traffic. Its windows were dark enough to hide faces, but Cole caught the shine of chrome along the grille and the clean sweep of new tires cutting through shallow mud. Duke stood beside him, biscuit forgotten, shoulders squared. The SUV passed the courthouse, turned at the far end of Main Street, and disappeared behind the old bank building. Martha's hand rested on the counter near the register, not touching the phone but close. "Who drives that?" Cole asked. "Clayton Reeves." The name meant nothing to him, but the way Martha said it did. "Local?" "Local enough to know who to buy. Rich enough to pretend he's not from here anymore." She folded the paper bag around Cole's supplies. "Reeves Mountain Development. They've been after the Upper Ridge for years. Blackwood Ridge and everything around it." Cole looked down at the matchbook in his hand. Frank Bennett. October 1978. The pencil marks had faded, but they were still there, small and stubborn. Martha leaned closer. "You need to be careful going back up that mountain." Cole slid the matchbook into his shirt pocket. "Careful is all I've got left." Duke gave a soft huff at the door. Cole paid what he could, though Martha tried again to leave off the dog food. He did not argue out loud. He simply set the extra coins on the counter, lifted the bag, and walked out with Duke at his side. The street seemed different now. Not busier, not louder, just aware. A man sweeping in front of the hardware store stopped moving when Cole passed. A woman inside the diner looked away too quickly. The courthouse flag snapped in the wind, the rope clinking against the pole like a loose buckle on a rucksack. Cole loaded the supplies into the pickup and checked beneath the truck before he got in. Duke watched the alley. Nothing moved. They drove back toward Blackwood Ridge under a sky the color of old tin. Cole took the road slow, letting the truck idle around washed-out curves. Twice he saw tire marks in the soft shoulder that had not been there before. Wide tread, heavy vehicle, same as the SUV. At the ridge gate, he stopped. A fresh track cut through the mud near the stone post, then backed out. Whoever had come up had not gone all the way to the house. Not yet. Cole sat still, listening to the engine tick. Duke's nose worked at the cracked window. "Yeah," Cole said. "I see it." They reached the house just after 3. The mansion stood against the mountain like it had grown out of bad weather. Mist clung to the stone walls. The tarp Cole had tied over the roof snapped in the wind, but held. For a moment, the sight gave him something close to satisfaction. One small thing fixed, one leak slowed, one more night possible. Then he saw the SUV. It was parked in the circular drive as if it owned the place. Black, polished, clean enough to reflect the broken windows of Blackwood Ridge House. A man stood near the porch, looking up at the mansion, with his hands in the pockets of a dark wool coat. He was about 60, tall, silver-haired, with the smooth fade of a man who paid other people to stand in weather for him. His boots were brown leather and spotless. That was the first thing Cole noticed. The drive was mud. The yard was mud. The porch steps were wet with moss. But Clayton Reeves stood there in clean boots. Duke jumped down before Cole opened his door fully. "Easy," Cole said. The dog stopped at Cole's knee, but his eyes never left the man. Clayton turned with a practiced smile. "Mr. Bennett." Cole closed the truck door. "You're on county property. Temporarily county property." Clayton's smile did not move. "And if I understand correctly, temporarily under your care." Cole walked no closer than he had to. Open ground between them. Truck behind him. Porch to the left. Tree line to the right. He kept Clayton in the center of his vision and let Duke cover the angle near the steps. "You have business here?" "I do." Clayton reached into his coat slowly, as if performing honesty, and pulled out a card. "Clayton Reeves. Reeves Mountain Development." Cole did not take the card. Clayton looked at Duke. "Beautiful dog." Duke did not blink. He doesn't care for strangers who walk around locked houses. "Locked?" Clayton glanced toward the front door. "I only arrived a few minutes ago. I was admiring the architecture." Cole's eyes moved to the man's left hand. There was a thin red scratch across the knuckle, fresh enough to still be bright. Clayton noticed Cole noticing and slipped the hand back into his pocket. "This house is a tragedy," Clayton said, turning back toward the mansion. "A magnificent old structure, yes, but far beyond saving. Roof failure, water damage, compromised foundation, no modern systems. A man could pour his life into this place and still lose it. Sounds like you've looked close. My company evaluates mountain properties. It's what we do in clean boots." For the first time, the smile thinned. Wind moved through the broken upper windows with a low whistle. Clayton reached into his coat again and this time pulled out an envelope. "I'll be direct. You're a veteran. You've fallen on difficult times. I respect service, Mr. Bennett. Truly. But this place will not reward stubbornness. It will bury you in fees, repairs, inspections, and legal complications." Cole said nothing. "I'm prepared to offer you $80,000 to relinquish your stewardship claim immediately. Cashier's check. Today. No questions, no delays. You and your dog can leave this mountain before nightfall with enough money to start over somewhere warm." 80,000. The number landed hard, but Cole kept his face still. He thought of the bridge, the frost on the windshield, Duke shaking under a torn blanket, a motel room, a used camper, food for months, vet care, maybe a phone call to Emily made from a place that did not sound like failure. Then Duke stepped forward, not lunging, not barking, just placing himself between Cole and Clayton Reeves. Clayton's eyes dropped to the dog, and something cold moved behind them. "Control him," Clayton said. "He is controlled. Then you should understand what I'm offering. A man in your position doesn't get many clean exits." Cole looked at the envelope, then at the house, then at the muddy drive where Clayton's vehicle had left careful tracks. "You said this place was beyond saving." "It is. But you want it bad enough to bring $80,000 up a mountain road in the rain." Clayton's jaw worked once. Cole took one step closer, slow. "So either you're bad at business, Mr. Reeves, or there's something here worth more than you're saying." The wind lifted the edge of Clayton's coat. For a moment, the polished man was gone. What stood there instead was older, harder, and less patient. "You don't know this ridge," Clayton said. "You don't know this town. You don't know what men have lost trying to hold on to Blackwood land." Cole's hand rested lightly on Duke's collar. The dog's muscles were tight as cable. Clayton slid the envelope back into his coat. "The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, things become more complicated. They already are." Clayton turned toward the SUV. Before getting in, he looked once toward the rear of the house. Not at the roof, not at the windows. Toward the cellar. Duke saw it too. The SUV rolled away, tires whispering over wet gravel, and disappeared down the ridge. Cole waited until the engine faded. Then he walked around back with Duke at his side. The padlock on the cellar door was still shut, but the rusted hasp bore 3 fresh marks near the screws. Thin scratches, bright metal under old brown corrosion. Cole crouched and touched one with his thumb. Duke lowered his nose to the seam and growled again, deeper this time. Cole looked toward the road where Clayton had vanished. $80,000, he said quietly, to walk away from a locked door. Under the cellar, somewhere deep in the stone, metal ticked once. Duke did not move. Neither did Cole. The sound did not repeat. That made it worse. Cole stayed crouched beside the cellar door with one hand on Duke's collar and the other resting near the hammer tucked through his belt. The ridge was quiet around them. Wind moved through the pines. Water slid from the broken gutters and tapped the weeds below. Down the mountain, somewhere far off, a crow called once and went silent. Duke kept his nose near the seam of the cellar door. His growl faded into a sound Cole felt more than heard. "Not from this side," Cole said. He stood and looked at the hasp again. 3 fresh scratches, bright metal. Somebody had tried to get in. Not hard enough to break the lock, just enough to test it. Just enough to know what held. Clayton Reeves had not come up here to admire old stone. Cole spent the rest of the afternoon making the house less easy to surprise. He dragged a fallen porch rail across the front steps, so anyone coming in would have to move it first. He wedged a chair under the back kitchen door. He hung empty bean cans on a piece of baling wire across the hall leading from the mudroom. It was not much. Not perimeter security. Not even close. But noise had saved men before. Duke followed him through every room, limping only when he thought Cole was not looking. At dusk, rain returned. Not the clean kind that washed things quiet. This rain came sideways, hard and cold, beating against the stone walls and finding every weakness in the roof. By midnight, water had started pooling in the rear hall. By 3 a.m, it was running down the cellar stairs inside the house, slipping beneath the old interior door Cole had not yet forced open. He woke to Duke's paw pressing his chest. Cole opened his eyes to darkness and the steady roar of rain. Duke stood over him, ears up. Then came the smell. Wet earth, rust, old stone, the trapped breath of a place that had not been opened in years. Cole sat up. Water was moving somewhere below them, not dripping now, but flowing. He pulled on his boots and jacket, clipped the flashlight to his belt, and picked up the pry bar. The interior cellar door was at the end of the rear hall, swollen into its frame and painted over so many times it looked fused to the wall. Cole worked the pry bar into the edge and leaned his weight slowly, listening to the wood complain. "Back," he told Duke. Duke backed 2 steps, no more. The door gave with a crack that echoed through the hall. Cole froze. For a second, the sound became something else. A blast door slamming. A compound gate giving way. Men shouting clear on the other side of a wall in a place where every room might hold a wire, a weapon, a boy too scared to move. He tasted dust that was not there. Duke bumped his leg. Cole looked down. Brown eyes, wet nose, Kentucky rain. Rotten door. He breathed once through his nose. "Moving," he whispered. The cellar stairs dropped into blackness. Cole swept the flashlight down the steps before placing a boot on the first one. Left corner, right corner, ceiling, floor. Slow, no rush. Rushing got men hurt. "Clear enough," he said. The cellar was older than the house above it. Stone walls hand-laid and sweating with moisture. Thick beams crossed the ceiling. Water ran down one wall and spread across the uneven floor until it covered Cole's boots. Shelves sagged under rusted paint cans, broken jars and tools with handles eaten soft by damp. Duke ignored all of it. He went straight to the far wall. Not to the shelves, not to the drain, not to the old furnace hulking in the corner like a dead animal. To the wall. It was made of rough gray stone, half hidden under moss and mineral stains. Duke pressed his nose against one section, inhaled, then began to scratch. "Duke." The dog kept scratching. His claws scraped stone and mortar with a dry, desperate sound that cut through the rain. Cole stepped closer, expecting a rat, maybe a possum trapped in the wall. Duke had found animals before. But this was different. His whole body was locked on that one spot, front legs braced, shoulders working, teeth bared not in anger, but in focus. "Leave it." Duke stopped for half a second, looked back at Cole, then hit the wall again harder. A smear of red appeared on the stone. Cole's stomach tightened. "Hey, enough." He caught Duke by the harness and pulled him back. Duke fought him. Not wild, not disobedient, pleading. The big dog twisted, paws slipping in the water, trying to get back to the wall. Cole dragged him 3 feet away and knelt. One front nail had split near the tip. Blood darkened the fur between 2 toes. "You stubborn old fool," Cole muttered, but his voice came out softer than he meant. He wrapped the paw with a strip torn from his undershirt. Duke stood still only until the knot was tied. Then he turned his head toward the wall again. Cole looked at it. "All right," he said. "Show me." Duke limped back and placed his nose against the same stone. Cole tapped the wall with the pry bar. The first stone answered dull and solid. He tapped the next. Same. The third. Same. The fourth gave a different sound. Hollow. Cole tapped it again. Lighter. Behind the stone, something carried the vibration away into open space. He stepped back and aimed the flashlight along the wall. Most of the cellar stones were rough, irregular, set by hand, but this section was too neat. 4 stones formed a rectangle about the size of a small window, their mortar darker than the rest, as if it had been patched long after the original wall went up. Cole's pulse changed. He looked toward the ceiling, then the floor, reading the structure. Load-bearing? Maybe not. The main weight ran through the corner pier. This patch had been filled in. Hidden. He put the pry bar to the mortar and worked carefully. The first scrape released the smell Duke had been chasing. Oil, old paper, cold metal. The rain outside seemed to fade. Piece by piece, Cole chipped away the softened mortar. Duke stood so close his shoulder touched Cole's knee. Every few minutes, Cole stopped to listen. No voices above, no tires outside, no movement except water and the dog's breath. At last, the fourth stone shifted. Cole got both hands on it and pulled. It came free with a wet suck and dropped into the water with a heavy splash. Air breathed out of the darkness beyond. Not much. Just a narrow space behind the wall, black and tight, with edges of rusted metal visible in the flashlight beam. Cole leaned closer. The opening was not a room. It was a passage or a ventilation line, barely wide enough for a man to crawl through on his belly. On the inside lip of the stone, under grime and mineral crust, something had been stamped into a small steel plate. Cole wiped it with his thumb. B-7/emergency line. He stared at the words. Duke pushed his nose toward the gap and gave one sharp, urgent breath. From somewhere deep inside the opening came a second metallic tick. Then a slow click answered it, farther away, beneath the house. Cole lifted the flashlight. The beam vanished into the narrow dark. "Well, Duke," he whispered, "looks like Blackwood Ridge has a basement under the basement." Cole did not crawl in right away. That was how men got buried. He widened the opening first, slow and careful, clearing mortar from the edges and pulling 2 more loose stones free. Each one came out heavy and cold, splashing into the cellar water. He checked the wall above for settling cracks, then pressed his palm against the beam overhead and listened. Old houses spoke before they failed. Blackwood Ridge only groaned in the rain. Cole took that as permission. He went upstairs for rope, his tool bag, and the small first aid kit he kept under the truck seat. Before going back down, he knelt beside Duke and checked the wrapped paw. The cloth had soaked through at the tip, but the bleeding had slowed. "You're staying here," Cole said. Duke looked at him like he had said something stupid. Cole pointed to the cellar floor. "Stay." The dog sat. Cole tied the rope around his own waist, looped the other end around a cellar support post, tested the knot twice, then clipped the flashlight to his jacket. He lowered himself to his stomach and slid into the emergency line. The passage was tighter than it looked. Stones scraped his shoulders, rust flaked against his cheek. The air inside was cold and dry, strange after the wet cellar behind him. He moved one elbow at a time, keeping his breathing shallow. The old training came back without asking. Don't hurry in a confined space. Don't kick dust into your own face. Don't put weight on anything that hasn't earned it. Behind him came a soft scrape. Cole stopped. Duke. The German shepherd's nose appeared in the opening, then one paw, then the other. The dog flattened himself and pulled forward, belly dragging against stone, eyes locked on Cole. "I gave you an order." Duke crawled another inch. Cole stared at him in the beam of the flashlight. Rainwater dripped somewhere behind them. The dog's wrapped paw left a faint red mark on the stone. Cole exhaled through his nose. "Fine. But if this gets ugly, you back out first." Duke blinked once and kept coming. The emergency line ran about 20 feet, then dropped into a narrow service tunnel tall enough for Cole to crouch. He lowered himself down, boots landing on dry gravel. Duke came after him with less grace, sliding the last foot and bumping against Cole's leg. The tunnel opened into a hidden mechanical room. Cole lifted the flashlight. A generator sat under a canvas tarp, stiff with age. Pipes ran along the walls, thick black iron with hand-painted labels flaking under dust. A pressure gauge hung crooked near a valve wheel. Shelves held oil cans, rubber gaskets, coils of wire, and glass jars filled with screws sorted by size. Nothing looked random. Whoever built this place had known systems: water, power, backup routes, pressure release. Not a rich man's hobby room, an engineer's room. Cole stepped in slowly, sweeping the corners. Clear. The word came out before he could stop it. Duke moved past him, nose low. Cole found a workbench along the far wall. On it lay a rusted wrench, a cracked lantern, and a metal clipboard holding brittle forms browned with age. Most of the writing had faded, but one line remained readable under the beam. Blackwood Ridge Auxiliary Water System. Inspection Log, 1978. Cole's fingers hovered over the paper. The year Martha had said Frank Bennett worked here. A sound came from Duke, not a growl. A short breath, sharp and focused. Cole turned. Duke had his muzzle buried in a pile of coal dust beneath the lower shelf. He pawed carefully this time, favoring the injured foot. Cole knelt beside him and brushed away black grit until his fingers struck metal. A small key lay hidden under the coal, dark with oil and age. Duke stepped back as if the job was now Cole's. "Good boy," Cole whispered. There was a steel box bolted under the workbench, easy to miss unless a man got low. The lock was military style, old but clean inside, protected from moisture by the dry room. Cole slid the key in. It turned. The lid opened with a soft metallic snap that seemed too loud underground. Inside was a folded oilcloth packet, a leather notebook, a stack of survey maps, and a photograph sealed in a yellowing plastic sleeve. Cole picked up the photograph first. A younger man stood outside Blackwood Ridge House beside another man in a suit and work coat. The younger man had dark hair, a square jaw, and eyes Cole had seen every morning in cracked mirrors and truck windows. Frank Bennett. Not drunk in a ditch, not the shameful ghost his mother had refused to talk about. Standing straight, one hand on a rolled blueprint, the other resting on the hood of an old county truck. Cole sat back on his heels. For a moment, the room went soft around the edges. Duke leaned against his side. Cole touched the photograph with one dirty thumb. He had only 3 memories of his father that still came clear. Frank tying a fishing knot, Frank sharpening a pencil with a pocket knife, Frank lifting Cole onto his shoulders so he could see over a parade crowd. None of those memories smelled like whiskey. He opened the notebook. The first pages were filled with numbers, water levels, pressure readings, coordinates, ridge markers. Then, halfway through, the handwriting changed from measurements to sentences. "Arthur says Reeves is moving faster than we thought. County records are vulnerable. Originals must not stay in town. If anything happens to me, the B7 line leads to the first cache. Stone room holds the rest." Cole read the line again. Stone room. His mouth had gone dry. He unfolded the letter wrapped in oilcloth. The paper was thick, expensive once, but the ink had bled at the edges with age. "To the one who finds this. My name is Arthur Blackwood. If this box has been opened, then Frank Bennett was right not to trust the county records office. Frank discovered that the Reeves family had begun altering land descriptions, water access claims, and mineral attachments tied to Blackwood Ridge. He believed the original documents would be stolen or destroyed. He was correct. Cole's hand tightened on the page. Frank was no thief, no drunk, and no fool. He risked his name to protect what did not belong to Reeves. If he died before clearing his reputation, then his blood deserves to know this. He was hunted because he stood between powerful men and the mountain they intended to steal. Cole stopped reading. The generator room hummed with old silence. Duke's ears lifted toward the tunnel behind them. Cole folded the letter once, carefully, but his fingers were not steady. Something old and buried had shifted inside him, something heavier than grief and sharper than anger. His father had not wandered into death. His father had been pushed toward it. From somewhere above, faint through stone and rain, came the sound of a vehicle door closing. Duke turned fully toward the emergency line. Cole switched off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed them both. For a few seconds, the whole mountain seemed to listen. Cole held one hand against Duke's chest to keep the dog still. Above them, through layers of stone, floorboards, and rain, another sound came, a low engine idle, then a door shutting softly. Not slammed. Whoever had come knew enough not to announce himself. Duke's breath warmed Cole's palm. Cole counted in silence. One man would move careless if he thought the place was empty. 2 men would talk. A man who had been here before would go straight where he meant to go. A footstep creaked somewhere overhead, then another. The sound crossed the rear hall above the cellar. Slow. Testing boards. Cole pictured the layout in his head. Cellar door, back stairs, kitchen, hall, parlor, front entry. He had slept one night in the house and already mapped it like an AO, because old habits were not habits anymore. They were bone. A faint metallic scrape came from above. The outside cellar hasp. Duke tensed. Cole lowered his face close to the dog's ear. Quiet. Another scrape. Then a pause. Then a short, frustrated sound too muffled to make out. The man above did not find what he wanted. After a minute, the footsteps retreated. The engine outside rose, turned in the muddy drive, and faded down the ridge road. Cole did not switch the flashlight back on until the silence had settled for a long while. When the beam returned, Duke was still staring toward the tunnel. "Yeah," Cole whispered. "He'll be back." He took only what he could carry flat under his coat. The photograph of Frank Bennett, 2 folded survey maps, Arthur Blackwood's letter, and 3 pages from the inspection log. He left the rest inside the engineer's box, closed it, locked it, and brushed coal dust back over the hidden key. Then he and Duke crawled out through the emergency line, slower than they had entered. By the time they reached the cellar again, daylight had begun to gray the high windows. Cole replaced the stones loosely in the wall, enough to hide the opening from a careless glance, not enough to trap himself if he needed back in fast. Duke's wrapped paw left small spots of red on the cellar floor. Cole saw every one. "You earned breakfast," he said. Duke leaned against his leg as if that was answer enough. 2 hours later, Cole drove into Cedar Hollow with the documents tucked inside his jacket. He parked behind Reed's store instead of out front and watched the street for a full minute before opening the door. "Stay," he told Duke. This time, Duke did. The injured paw rested on the seat, his eyes tracking the alley through the cracked window. Inside, Martha Reed took one look at Cole's face and locked the front door. "What did you find?" Cole laid the photograph on the counter. Martha's hand went to her mouth. "That's Frank," she said. "You sure?" "I knew your father before you could walk." Her voice thinned but did not break. "That's him." Cole unfolded Arthur's letter. Martha read it once, then again, her lips pressing tighter with every line. "He tried to tell people," she said. "Your father. He came in here twice that last week looking like a man being followed. My husband told him to go to the sheriff." "Did he?" "He went to Eli Boone." Cole looked toward the door. Martha reached for the phone. "Then that's who you need next." Eli Boone lived on the edge of town in a white house with peeling trim and a flag that had been repaired at least twice. He was in his 70s, broad through the shoulders, with a limp and a sheriff's stare that had survived retirement. He listened without interrupting while Cole showed him the maps, the letter, the photograph. When he finished, Eli stood and walked to a locked cabinet. From it, he took a thin folder tied with string. "Frank Bennett," he said. "Single vehicle crash. County Road 9, October 23rd, 1978. Cole did not reach for the folder right away. Eli placed it on the kitchen table between them. I was a deputy then. Your father's truck went off the ridge on a dry night. They said whiskey bottle under the seat. I said the bottle hadn't broken, and the cap was still sealed. Martha, who had come with Cole, closed her eyes. What happened? Cole asked. My report disappeared. Eli tapped the folder. This is my copy. Cole opened it. Photographs, typed notes, tire marks on gravel, brake fluid on the road. A witness statement from a gas station clerk who had seen a dark pickup following Frank's truck less than an hour before the crash. Reeves? Cole asked. Eli's mouth hardened. Back then, Clayton was just the son. His father, Warren Reeves, was buying land cheap after the record fire. Folks who refused had liens appear, wells condemned, loans called in. Your father found the paper trail. Then he died. The room went quiet except for the refrigerator humming. Eli leaned forward. If Arthur Blackwood hid originals up there, they can stop Clayton's resort. Water rights, quarry royalties, timber attachments, maybe damages. We're not talking about a house anymore, son. We're talking about the mountain. Cole folded the map. I need to go back. Eli nodded. And you need to assume somebody already knows you found a door. Cole drove hard up the ridge, faster than he should have on wet gravel. The house appeared through the trees near dusk. Before he reached the drive, Duke began to bark, not loud. 3 short bursts from inside the truck, sharp and urgent. Cole braked beside the gate. The front door of Blackwood Ridge stood open. He had shut it. Cole killed the engine and stepped out with the hammer in his hand. Duke pushed past him, ignoring the injured paw, and moved low toward the porch. Cole followed, staying off the center path, using the broken stone wall for cover, until he reached the steps. The bean cans he had strung across the rear hall were scattered across the floor. Someone had come through the kitchen. A window near the back had been pried open. The frame splintered. His toolbox lay overturned. Drawers yawned open. The parlor had been searched, not vandalized. That was worse. Angry men broke things. Careful men looked for something. Then Duke made a sound Cole had never heard from him before. A low, painful whine. Cole found him at the cellar door inside the rear hall, standing with his body blocking the way down. His teeth were bared toward the darkness below. A red tear marked the fur across his shoulder, shallow but long, as if someone had caught him with wire or a blade when he drove them back. Cole dropped beside him. Duke! The dog did not look away from the stairs. Cole pressed his coat against the wound. Duke flinched once, then held still, shaking with effort, still guarding the cellar. On the muddy floor beside the door was a partial boot print, same tread pattern as the marks at the gate. Beside it lay a torn scrap of black fabric caught on a nail. Cole picked it up. Tiny white letters ran along the edge. R.M. D. Reeves Mountain Development. Cole folded the cloth in his fist and looked down into the cellar darkness. Duke leaned against him, bleeding but still on duty. Cole's voice came out quiet enough to belong to another man. All right, he said. Now we know what they're willing to do. The first thing Cole did was not chase. That was what the old part of him wanted. Follow the tracks down the mountain. Find the SUV. Put a hand on Clayton Reeves and make him explain why Duke was bleeding on a cellar floor. But anger was loud, and loud got men killed. Cole carried Duke into the parlor and laid him near the fire. The dog resisted until Cole gave him the look that had once made young soldiers stop arguing in dust storms and freezing rain. Down. Duke went down. Cole cleaned the shoulder wound with boiled water and the last of the antiseptic from his kit. It was ugly, but not deep. A tear through fur and skin, likely from catching himself on jagged metal or broken glass while driving the intruder back. Duke watched Cole work without a sound. Only once, when the cloth touched the raw edge, did his paw press hard against the floorboards. Cole bandaged it with strips from a clean shirt he had saved for no good reason except pride. "There," he said. "You look like hell, but you'll keep." Duke's tail moved once against the floor. Cole sat beside him for a while, listening to rain slide off the tarp roof. The papers from the engineer's box lay on the table under a coffee mug. Frank Bennett's photograph caught the firelight. His father had stood on this ridge with a blueprint in his hand and trouble closing in around him. Cole had spent most of his life trying not to become the man he thought Frank had been. Now the shape of that old shame was changing, and Cole did not know where to put the years he had wasted hating a ghost. Near dawn, he unfolded the survey map again. Arthur Blackwood's notes were cramped in the margins. Water lines, old quarry roads, ridge markers, cross-sections of stone tunnels beneath the property. One symbol appeared 3 times, a small square with a diagonal mark through it. The third one sat behind the mansion. Glasshouse access, stone room below. Cole looked out the cracked window toward the rear grounds. The old glasshouse was barely visible through mist and overgrowth. A long iron frame half swallowed by vines. Its roof had caved in years ago. Broken panes caught the morning light like dull teeth. Duke lifted his head. "No," Cole said. Duke stood anyway. Cole pointed at the bandage. "You're on medical profile." The dog walked to the door and looked back. Cole almost smiled, but it hurt too much. They moved after sunrise. Cole packed light, flashlight, pry bar, rope, camera phone. The survey map folded inside a plastic bag. He took photographs of every document before leaving the parlor and hid the originals beneath a loose hearthstone. Not perfect. Better than nothing. Outside, the yard was soaked and shining. The storm had stripped leaves from the trees and plastered them against the stone walls. Cole moved in a wide arc instead of crossing open ground straight to the glasshouse. He paused twice, listening. No engines, no voices, no birds either, which bothered him. Duke limped beside him, nose low, ignoring every quiet command to stay back. The glasshouse had once been beautiful. Cole could see that beneath the ruin. Curved iron ribs, long planting beds, a brick walkway down the center, rusted trays where seedlings had probably stood in neat rows. Now saplings grew through broken tile, and thorn vines wrapped the frame so tightly they seemed to be holding it together. Cole tested the iron door. It came loose in his hand with a scream of rust. He froze. The sound rang across the ridge. Duke turned toward the trees, ears forward. Cole waited. Nothing answered. Inside, the air smelled of wet leaves, old soil, and green things growing where they should not. Glass crunched under Cole's boots. He placed each step carefully, choosing brick over dirt, solid edges over dark patches. The roof had dropped beams across the far end. One wrong movement could bring the rest down. Slow, he told Duke. But Duke had already found something. He stood near the rear planting bed, front paw hovering above a cracked floor tile. His nose pressed close, breath pushing dust from a narrow seam. Then he began to dig, gently at first, using the uninjured paw. Cole crouched beside him. "What is it?" Duke scratched again. The tile shifted. Cole brushed away soil and vine roots. Beneath the cracked tile was not dirt, but stone. A fitted slab with an iron ring folded flat into a groove. The ring was black with age, almost invisible until Duke had cleared the mud packed around it. Cole looked at the map. Glasshouse access. He hooked the pry bar through the ring and pulled. Nothing. He changed angle, braced his boots, and pulled again with his legs instead of his back. The slab groaned upward, releasing a breath of air so cold Cole felt it through his gloves. Stone steps descended into darkness. Duke tried to go first. Cole caught his harness. Not this time. He tied the rope to the iron frame, tested the first step, then the second. Dry. Solid. Old but well cut. Whoever had built this had not been hiding from weather. They had been hiding from people. The staircase turned twice before ending at a narrow chamber carved directly into the mountain. Cole's flashlight crossed the room and stopped. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Metal cabinets, map tubes, water-sealed boxes. A drafting table sat in the center under a canvas cover. The air was cold enough to preserve paper, dry enough to keep rot away. On the far wall, a brass plate had been bolted into stone. Stone Room Blackwood Ridge Original Records. Cole stepped inside like a man entering a church after years of standing outside in the rain. Duke came in behind him, limping, head high. Cole pulled the canvas from the drafting table. Maps covered the surface. Not copies. Originals. Heavy linen-backed surveys marked with county seals from 1912, 1924, 1949. Water rights traced in blue ink from springs high above Cedar Hollow, down through farms, mills, and old mining claims. Timber parcels outlined in green. Quarry royalties in red. Every line signed, witnessed, recorded. In the first cabinet, Cole found ledgers. In the second, escrow statements. In the third, correspondence between Arthur Blackwood and a law firm in Louisville, warning that altered county records could not erase original attached rights if the source documents survived. Cole photographed everything with hands that had steadied explosives under fire, but shook now over paper. One folder bore a recent appraisal, dated only 2 years earlier. Estimated combined value of water rights, timber controls, quarry royalties, development damages, and escrow recovery, $250 million. Cole read the number 3 times. Duke sat beside him, panting softly. No gold, no cash stacked in cartoon piles, nothing that gleamed, just paper. Paper that could move mountains, paper that men had died for. On the stone table at the back of the room sat one envelope, sealed in wax gone brittle with age. The handwriting was careful, slanted, and faded brown. For Frank Bennett's blood, if he ever comes home. Cole stood over it for a long moment. Then he set his palm flat on the cold stone. Above them, somewhere in the ruined glasshouse, a floor tile shifted. Duke rose with a low growl. Cole turned off the light again. This time, in the dark, he heard footsteps directly overhead. Dust fell from the stone ceiling in tiny grains. Cole stood without breathing, one hand against Duke's harness, the other closed around the sealed envelope from the table. Above them, the broken glasshouse creaked in the wind. A boot shifted on loose tile. Then another. Not animal, not weather. A man was walking through the ruin above the stone room. Duke's growl stayed trapped in his chest. So low, Cole felt it through the harness strap. Cole lowered his mouth near the dog's ear. Hold. The footsteps crossed from left to right, slow, searching. Glass cracked under weight. Vines scraped iron ribs. Whoever stood up there had not found the hidden slab yet, but he was close enough that dirt sifted down through the seams. Cole looked around the stone room in the dark. One way out. The same stairs. Bad odds. He moved by memory, not light. The envelope went inside his coat. The nearest folders he had photographed went back into the cabinet. He pulled the canvas cover over the drafting table and guided Duke behind a row of metal boxes near the far wall. Above them, a man coughed. Then a phone buzzed. Cole heard the voice faintly through stone and broken glass. No. Nothing here but old plant junk. A pause. I checked the house. He's gone or hiding. Dog too. Another pause. I said I'll look. Duke's ears flattened. Cole's thumb found the flashlight switch, but did not press it. He pictured the man above. One intruder, maybe the same one who had cut Duke, reporting to someone. Not Clayton, unless Clayton had stopped pretending. The bootsteps moved away from the hidden slab. A moment later, they faded toward the mansion. Cole waited until the old glasshouse stopped trembling. Then he waited longer. When he finally climbed the stairs, he came up slowly, shoulder first, eyes level with the floor, before his head cleared the opening. The glasshouse was empty. Rain tapped the remaining panes. Fresh boot prints marked the damp soil near the central walkway. One print stopped less than 3 feet from the stone slab. Cole closed the entrance and covered the seams with mud, leaves, and a broken tray of dead roots. Not perfect. Enough for a passing glance. Duke nosed the ground where the intruder had stood, then sneezed sharply. Same scent? The dog looked toward the ridge road. Cole took that as yes. They did not go straight back to the house. Cole cut through the trees instead, keeping below the rise, using the pine shadows and old stone wall for cover. The rain softened their movement. At the back kitchen window, he paused, listened, then slipped inside. The mansion waited dark and open-mouthed. No voices, no engine. The intruder had left. Cole barred the kitchen door with a fallen cabinet plank, then went to the parlor. Only when Duke lay near the fireplace, still watching the hall, did Cole pull the envelope from his coat. The wax broke with a dry snap. Inside were 6 pages folded around a copy of a trust document. Arthur Blackwood's handwriting covered the first sheet, faded but firm. If Frank Bennett's child or grandchild ever reads this, then the ridge has not swallowed the truth after all. Cole sat down slowly. The fire had burned low. Orange light moved over Frank's photograph on the table. He read on. Frank was the last honest man to stand between Blackwood Ridge and the Reeves family. He knew the water claims were being altered. He knew the county record fire would be blamed on faulty wiring. He knew the originals had to be hidden where only someone with his map and courage could reach them. Cole swallowed once. The second page changed everything. Should the Blackwood line fail, and should the original water and land documents remain concealed due to fraud, guardianship of the Ridge Trust shall pass temporarily to Frank Bennett or to his direct living heir, for the purpose of restoration, legal recovery, and protection of the attached water rights. Cole read the sentence again, then a third time. Direct living heir. The words did not make him rich. Not yet. They did not fix the roof, heal Duke's shoulder, clear Frank's name, or make Emily answer a call, but they changed the ground beneath his feet. He was not just a homeless man sleeping in a dead house because the county had run out of options. He had standing, a legal foothold, a reason Clayton Reeves wanted him gone before he understood what he was holding. Cole turned the page. Arthur had written one final note beneath the copied clause. Frank believed no man should own the water that keeps a town alive. If his blood ever comes home, I pray he protects the mountain better than my family could. Cole set the paper down and looked toward the dark windows. For most of his life, the Bennett name had felt like a weight, a stain, a story whispered in kitchens and county offices. Drunk. Failure. Dead on a back road. Now that name sat on an old trust like a key. Duke lifted his head as Cole pulled out his phone. The battery showed 12%. Cole stared at Emily's number for a long time before pressing call. It rang 4 times. Then her voice came through, guarded and tired. Hello? Cole's throat closed. He had imagined this call too many times. From a job site. From a shelter. From a hospital parking lot. From nowhere. Every version began with an apology and ended with the silence he deserved. "Emily," he said. There was a long pause. "Dad?" He closed his eyes. Rain ran down the broken window behind him. "I know you don't want a call from me." I didn't say that, but she had not said anything else either. Cole looked at Frank's photograph, then at Duke's bandaged shoulder. His hands started to shake, so he set the phone on speaker and placed it on the table before he dropped it. "I found something," he said. "Are you safe?" The question hit harder than he expected. "For now." "What does that mean?" Cole could not fit 30 years of lies, a dead father, a hidden room, a bleeding dog, and a mountain worth killing for into one sentence. So he did the only thing he could manage. He took photos of the trust clause, Arthur's note, Frank's picture, and the appraisal page showing the estimated value. Then he sent them. The phone went quiet. 1 minute. 2. Duke watched Cole as if he understood that this silence had teeth. Emily came back on the line different, not soft, not forgiving, but awake. "Dad," she said slowly, "where are you?" "Blackwood Ridge. The house from the county notice? You know about that? Peter Lawson called the VA clinic asking if I knew how to reach you." I didn't call back. Cole nodded, though she could not see it. Emily's voice tightened. "This trust names Frank Bennett. He was my father. I know who he was." "No," Cole said, looking at the old photograph. "I don't think either of us did." A sound came from outside. Not thunder. An engine low on the ridge road. Duke stood instantly. Cole picked up the phone. "Emily, listen carefully. If I send you a location, forward it to Peter Lawson and a retired sheriff named Eli Boone. Do not call the Cedar Hollow Sheriff's Office first. What's happening?" Headlights swept through the broken front windows, white bars moving across the parlor wall. Cole killed the fire with the wet blanket. Darkness dropped over the room. "Dad?" Cole crouched beside Duke, one hand on the dog's back, phone close to his mouth. "Someone's here," he whispered. "And this time they're not checking the doors." Emily's voice sharpened through the speaker. "Dad, get out of there!" Cole did not answer. Headlights slid across the parlor wall again, then vanished as the vehicle turned toward the rear of the house. Not one set. 2. Tires rolled over wet gravel without hurry. Men who were afraid drove fast. Men who thought they owned the night took their time. Duke's shoulder tightened under Cole's palm. Cole touched the phone screen, sent Emily the location, then pushed the device deep inside his coat. "Find Peter Lawson," he whispered. "Find Eli Boone. Don't trust the local office first." "Dad!" He ended the call. Outside, a door opened. Then another. Wind carried a man's voice through the cracked glass. "Check the cellar." He found something. Cole moved. He did not run. Running made noise. He gathered the trust papers, Frank's photograph, Arthur's letter, and the copied appraisal page from the table. The original stone room documents were still under the mountain, but the copies mattered now. He shoved them into the canvas tool bag, then looked once toward the front entry. Bad exit. Exposed. Back kitchen. Covered but likely watched. Cellar line. Dangerous, but known. "Duke," he breathed. The dog followed before the command was finished. They crossed the rear hall just as the first boot hit the porch. Cole slipped through the cellar door and pulled it nearly shut behind him. Above them, wood cracked under weight. A flashlight beam stabbed through the gap at the top of the stairs, then passed on. Cole moved down into the cellar, through ankle-deep water, to the hidden wall. The loose stones came out fast now. He pushed the bag through first, then Duke, then folded himself into the emergency line. Behind them, the cellar door banged open. "Down here!" Cole crawled harder, elbows driving through cold grit. Duke's breath rasped ahead of him. The injured shoulder slowed the dog, but only a little. In the mechanical room, Cole did not stop. He grabbed the maps from the engineer's box and shoved them into the bag. A voice echoed from the cellar. Walls open. Cole's jaw set. They knew. He and Duke moved through the service tunnel, out by the old glasshouse access, and down the stone steps into the stone room. Cole dropped the tool bag on the drafting table, pulled out his phone, and photographed everything again, one with quick, steady hands. Trust, water rights, escrow statements. Arthur's final note. Frank Bennett's name. Thunder cracked above the ridge. White flashed through the stairwell. For half a breath, Cole was not underground in Kentucky. He was back in a concrete room overseas, dust shaking from the ceiling, radio chatter breaking apart, a young private with wide eyes asking where to stand. Cole's hand locked around the table edge. Duke pressed against his leg. Cole looked down. The dog's bandage was wet. Not just rainwater. Red had spread through the cloth at his shoulder and paw. "Stay with me," Cole whispered. Duke looked up, steady as stone. Footsteps hit the glasshouse stairs. Cole turned. Clayton Reeves came down first, holding a flashlight. Two men followed him, one carrying a metal case, the other a short pry bar. Clayton no longer wore a polished smile. Rain darkened his coat, and mud streaked the clean boots. "Well," Clayton said, sweeping the light across the shelves, the cabinets, the table, "Frank Bennett's boy really did come home." Cole stepped between him and the records. Clayton's eyes moved to the documents. For the first time since Cole had met him, the man looked almost hungry. "You have no idea what you're standing in," Clayton said. "I know enough." "No. You found paper and mistook it for power." Clayton reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "Sign over your stewardship claim and any discovered materials. You and the dog walk away tonight." Cole did not look at the paper. "You tried that already." Clayton's face hardened. "Then we do it the hard way." One of his men moved toward the table. Duke lunged before Cole could stop him, not to bite, but to block. The man swung the pry bar down against the stone beside Duke's head, and the sound rang through the chamber like a shell strike. Cole flinched hard. His vision tunneled. A hand grabbed his jacket. Cole twisted, broke the grip, and shoved the man back into a cabinet. Files spilled across the floor. The second man slammed the metal case onto the table and opened it. Inside were fuel cans and rags. "No," Cole said. Clayton's voice stayed calm. "Records burn. Tunnels collapse. Old houses have accidents." Duke barked once, sharp and furious. The chamber seemed to answer. Somewhere beyond the far wall, a draft moved. Duke turned toward it. His nose lifted. He limped across the floor to a narrow grate half hidden behind stacked map tubes. Cole saw it. Vent line. Too small for a man. Big enough for Duke, maybe. The grate led toward the old horse barn shown on Frank's map. A service vent. Emergency air path. Another way out. Cole grabbed his phone and a small flash drive from the tool bag. He had copied the photos onto it the night before, a habit from too many times watching paper disappear. He wrapped the drive, Arthur's note, the appraisal page, and a strip torn from a map in plastic. Then he wrote on the back of a receipt with a carpenter's pencil. "Contact Eli. Stone room. Reeves armed." He tied the packet to Duke's collar with paracord. Duke looked at him. Cole held the dog's face in both hands. "Find Martha." The dog did not move. "Duke. Go." Clayton saw the grate. "Stop that dog." Cole shoved the drafting table sideways with everything he had. It crashed into Clayton's men, scattering papers and blocking their path for 3 precious seconds. Duke tore at the loose grate, squeezed through, and vanished into the black vent. A metal edge caught his rear leg. The sound he made cut through Cole worse than thunder, but Duke kept going. Cole heard claws scraping inside the narrow pipe, then fading. Clayton grabbed Cole by the coat and drove him against the stone wall. "You think a wounded dog is going to save you?" Cole looked past him, toward the dark vent where Duke had disappeared. Rain roared somewhere beyond the mountain. Thunder rolled over Blackwood Ridge. Above the noise, far away and growing fainter, came one last scrape of claws on metal. Cole smiled with blood on his lip. "No," he said. "I think he already has." Duke came out of the vent behind the old horse barn on his side. For a moment, he did not stand. Rain hammered the tin roof above him. Mud ran in thin brown streams between the broken stalls. The packet tied to his collar hung against his chest, wrapped in plastic, dark with water and blood from the cut along his leg. The dog lifted his head. Thunder rolled over Blackwood Ridge. Far below, beyond the trees and Switchback Road, one warm square of yellow light glowed in Cedar Hollow. Reed's store. Duke pulled one paw beneath him, then the other. He stood. The first step nearly dropped him. The second held. By the third, training older than pain took over. Find the scent. Follow the road. Return with help. He moved through the storm with his head low, slipping once on wet leaves, catching himself against a stump, leaving small red marks where his injured paw struck stone. At the ridge road, he stopped and looked back. The mansion above was black against the lightning. Then he ran downhill. Inside the stone room, Clayton Reeves had stopped smiling. Cole was on his knees near the drafting table, wrists bound with a strip of electrical cord. One of Clayton's men was stuffing papers into a canvas sack. The other poured fuel in a thin line along the base of the cabinets. Cole kept his eyes on Clayton. "You burn those records," he said. "You burn the only proof your family didn't already lose this fight." Clayton turned slowly. "My family has never lost this ridge. Then why are you down here in the rain with gasoline?" The man with the fuel can paused. Clayton stepped close enough that Cole could smell wet wool and cold anger. "Because your father should have stayed dead and forgotten." Cole lifted his head. The words landed exactly where Clayton wanted them to, but Cole did not look away. "My father found your father's theft. My father built this county. Your father forged water claims after the record fire." Clayton's face tightened. Cole pushed harder, not because he was brave, but because every second mattered. Duke needed road. Duke needed time. "Frank Bennett didn't die drunk," Cole said. "He died because Warren Reeves needed him quiet." Clayton leaned down, voice low and shaking. "Your father was a repairman who stuck his hands into matters above him. And yours was a thief." Clayton's hand closed into a fist. "My father did what weak men were too afraid to do. He took a dying mountain and made it useful. Blackwood hid behind paper. Frank hid behind honor. Men like that always end up under dirt." A sound came from the stairwell. Clayton spun. Not police. Wind. Only wind moving through the cracked glasshouse above. He exhaled and pointed to the cabinets. "Finish it." Down in Cedar Hollow, Martha Reed was wiping the counter when something struck the front door. Once. Then again. She looked up. Through the rain-blurred glass stood Duke, soaked to the bone, one paw lifted, head hanging low. For 1 second, Martha did not move. Then she unlocked the door so fast the bell nearly tore loose. Duke stumbled inside and dropped to the wooden floor. "Oh, Lord," Martha whispered. He did not whine. He pushed his muzzle toward the plastic packet at his collar. Martha knelt, hands shaking as she untied it. The note fell open first. "Contact Eli. Stone room. Reeves armed." Martha grabbed the phone. By the time Eli Boone reached the store, he was still buttoning his coat. Peter Lawson arrived 2 minutes later, pale and breathless, clutching a briefcase. Emily Bennett came in last, hair wet from the rain, hospital scrubs under a jacket, her phone already in her hand. She stopped when she saw Duke on the floor. "That's my dad's dog." Duke lifted his head at her voice. Emily's face changed. Martha handed her the packet. "Then your dad sent him to save more than himself." They did not call the Cedar Hollow sheriff first. Peter Lawson called state police directly. Eli called a trooper he had trained 20 years earlier. Emily forwarded every image Cole had sent her, along with the live location and the note from Duke's collar. Then, while the storm cracked over the valley, they went up the mountain. Eli drove first, his old truck sliding through mud with purpose. The state cruisers followed with lights off until the ridge gate. Emily sat in the back seat beside Duke, pressing a towel against his injured leg. "Hold on," she whispered, though she did not know if she was speaking to the dog or to her father. At Blackwood Ridge, lightning showed the mansion in sharp white pieces. The glasshouse glowed faintly from below. Smoke. Cole smelled it before he saw flame. Clayton's man had lit the first rag near the filing cabinets. Fire crawled along the fuel line, small and blue at the edges. Papers curled in the heat. Cole drove his shoulder into the man nearest him, not enough to win, just enough to knock him sideways into the table. The floor took Cole hard. His ribs caught stone. Clayton swore and reached for the burning rag. Then voices burst from above. "State police! Hands where we can see them!" Light flooded the stairwell. Clayton froze with one hand over the documents and the other holding Arthur Blackwood's trust papers. Emily came down behind the first trooper, phone raised, recording. Eli followed, slower but steady, eyes taking in the fuel, the bound wrists, the open cabinets. Clayton tried to put the papers behind him. Peter Lawson's voice came from the stairs, sharp for the first time Cole had ever heard it. "Those documents are under county preservation order as of 10 minutes ago, Mr. Reeves." Clayton laughed once, wild and thin. "You have no idea what those papers mean." Emily stepped into the room. "Then explain it." Clayton turned toward her, rainwater dripping from his hair, his face stripped of polish. "They mean your grandfather should have minded his own business. They mean Warren Reeves had to clean up Frank Bennett's mess before he ruined everything." The room went still. Emily's thumb hovered over her phone screen. Recording. Cole looked at her, and for the first time in years, his daughter looked back at him without turning away. The troopers moved in. Clayton Reeves did not fight. Men like him expected rooms to bend around them. When this one did not, he simply stood there, staring at the papers as if they had betrayed him. Duke reached the stone room after everyone else. Emily tried to hold him back, but the dog pulled free and limped down the steps, slow and stubborn. He crossed the stone floor past troopers, past scattered records, past the dying line of fire, and pressed his head against Cole's chest. Cole, still on his knees, lowered his face into the wet fur. "Good boy," he whispered. "You made it." Weeks became hearings. Hearings became lawsuits. Lawsuits became headlines. The stone room records proved what Blackwood Ridge had been hiding for decades. Original water rights, timber controls, quarry royalties, escrow accounts, and damages tied to fraudulent land transfers. The estimated recovery reached $250 million. But the number was not what people remembered. They remembered the dog that came down the mountain in a storm. They remembered Frank Bennett's name cleared in open court. They remembered Clayton Reeves being led past the courthouse steps, while the families his company had pressured stood across the street in silence. Cole could have sold the ridge. Developers came with better offers than Clayton ever had. Men in suits talked about luxury cabins, private roads, a wellness resort, controlled access, mountain views for people who could afford to escape the world. Cole listened. Then he said no. By the next fall, Blackwood Ridge House had a new roof, new windows, repaired stone steps, and warm light in rooms that had been dark for 30 years. The old parlor became a common room. The dining hall became a kitchen. The West Wing became temporary housing for veterans with nowhere else to go. Behind the glasshouse, where the stone room entrance stayed protected and locked, a new sign stood beside the gravel drive: Duke House Veterans Recovery and Service Dog Center. On the first cold evening of November, Cole stood on the restored porch with a set of keys in his hand. A young veteran waited at the bottom of the steps, thin coat zipped to his chin, one hand trembling around a paper cup of coffee. Duke lay beside the door, his injured leg healed but still stiff in the cold. A white scar crossed his shoulder where the bandage had been. Cole walked down the steps and placed the keys in the young man's hand. "Room 3, he said. "Heat works. Bed's clean. Dogs allowed if you've got one. If not, we'll introduce you to a few who need somebody." The young man stared at the keys like he did not trust their weight. Cole knew that look. Behind him, Emily stood in the doorway, helping Martha carry blankets inside. Eli sat near the fireplace, arguing with Peter Lawson over coffee. The house smelled of bread, pine smoke, and fresh-cut wood. Duke rose and came to Cole's side. Together, man and dog looked out over the dark ridge. The mountain that men had tried to steal was still there. The water still ran beneath it. The old stone house no longer looked abandoned. Its windows glowed gold against the blue evening, each one a small promise kept. Cole rested one hand on Duke's head. For a long time, he had believed survival meant making it through one more night. Now, as another homeless veteran stepped into the warmth behind him, Cole understood that some places were not given away because they were worthless. Some places were waiting for the right wounded souls to come home. And if this story touched your heart, leave a simple comment below. Comment 1 if you believe Duke was more than just a dog. Comment 0 if you believe every forgotten veteran deserves a warm place to come home to. Your comment helps keep stories like this alive. And if you want to hear more powerful stories about loyalty, courage, hidden truths, and second chances, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because the next story may begin with someone the world forgot and end with a secret no one saw coming.